Welcome, viewers, to this in a new series of an old thing that we've done before. It's a new series of good, bad, and batshit. Uh, but this time we're looking at something a little bit different. But first of all, I'm Stu Jackson, and with me
It's Craig Houston.
is Craig. Hello, Craig. And
Good
we're
evening.
both dressed for the part tonight, but we'll come on to that in just a moment because we had this idea a little while ago, didn't we, about doing the good, bad, and batshit. But for part, in fact, it was your idea. I need to give all the credit here. You're to blame.
Yeah, it's my
Of
fault.
doing all the pilots.
Yeah, and all this essentially Star Trek firsts.
Star Trek first. Now, Star Trek's been first for a lot of things, so there's a lot of stuff to that we can do almost ad infinitum. Oh, the first time you
Oh
see a
yes.
Klingon, the first time you see a Romulan, the first time, yeah. Anyway, there'll be all kinds of things that we'll be looking at. But tonight, as this is our pilot of the pilot, Good, Bad, and Batshit, we're doing the original pilot.
The
Oh,
Cage.
the cage. Hence why I'm wearing my cage uniform and you're sporting.
I've got a sexy The Cage t-shirt with characters on, and it's fandaby dozy.
It's
Really
absolutely
sexy.
brilliant.
I mean,
I've
it's not on
not
a sexy body,
seen.
but sexy.
Hey, it's sexy to some people.
Answers on a postcard.
It took me a long time to realize. I'm going off on a digression now, but it took me a long time to realize there are people that find this, appealing.
Chihuahua.
Indeed. So anyway, there we go. That's moving very swiftly on from that.
Very
Love the
swiftly on.
t-shirt. Did you say you got that from a certain
A
a
certain
certain
tax dodging website, yes.
yeah, should we mention where it's from, given they're now part of the axis of evil?
Yeah, you can guess. That's all we need to say.
Yeah. Yeah, anyway, but yeah, I've not seen that one. I keep an eye on the old Star Trek t-shirts, and I've not seen that one. That is absolutely brilliant. So, so the cage, which is the original part, and one of the things that I think a lot of people forget, especially like newer Trekkies, is that when you and I were Trekkies, like when we were watching the original series back in the day, up to pretty much when the Next Generation started, the cage wasn't available.
No, it was just part of, well, repurposed into the Menagerie Parts 1 and 2. The
Yep.
first arrival of the cage came on a video cassette when they were releasing the series, and the initial release was had a lot of black and white footage in it
Mm,
because they didn't have all the source material um, from back in the 60s. I mean, it's subsequently been reinserted and came out
yes.
on video and then DVD and then Blu-ray and on streaming.
That that's it. So yeah, it came onto video. So both VHS and Betamax. Betamax was the most superior one, of
Back
course.
in the day.
And video disc. They were all released
Oh,
at the
yes,
same
the
time.
laser disc thing, yeah.
Yeah, that was in
Was in Japan
yeah,
originally, I think.
November of '86
Call Play Me.
when that came out. So just before um no, sorry, November of '85. Yes, November of '85, and then it wasn't aired. The first time it ever aired was almost a year into the Next Generation, November 1986.
Bloody.
It's
88.
it,
88,
I
87, 88. Yeah.
That's right. It came out on video in '86 and it aired in '88. Yeah, yeah, that sounds right.
But yeah, I mean the Cage is a really interesting episode because it was at the time one of the most expensive TV pilots ever made. I think
Yeah,
$400,000, which was like massive. I mean, it's massive
I
money
mean
for
it's not a
1964.
small amount now, um,
No,
but yeah, back then that was a huge, huge sum of money.
But it's always the same when you've got pilots of things because the front end expenses.
Mm.
That's why Star Trek the motion picture costs so much. But we'll talk about that then.
We will no doubt be coming on to that. But yeah, and like a lot of pilots, it wasn't really made to be aired. I mean, they did try and get this one aired, but that in itself was quite unusual back in the day. You'd make a pilot, and that's what you would use to sell the series. But then they'd make a lot of changes to it, and the first episode of the series would quite often be very different to the pilot.
I mean, you think in recent-ish history, something like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that
Hmm.
pilot turned up online a good few years ago and it's markedly different. And one of the biggest ones and one of the most expensive ones is the Game of Thrones pilot, which nobody's ever seen outside of HBO. And that's not leaked or turned
Mm.
up anywhere with a considerable different cast.
It's a shocking concept that it's out there somewhere and nobody has leaked it. Because how much money is that going to be worth?
Oh yeah, at least £12 at least.
Mm,
And
indeed.
a whole lot of gold pressed platinum, I can tell you.
That's it. Right. So, as is the way with the good, bad, and bad shit, usually in the previous ones, I've done a red alert, spoiler alert, but given that this is nearly like almost 60 years old, no, I think we can forego that. But we do like to have a bit of a sort of a recap and a synopsis. And in order to keep this short, Craig,
Yeah,
uh,
previously on Star Trek.
yeah, wow,
There
I'm
isn't
going to
any
give you a bit of
previously on.
a bit of a challenge, and I'm going to give you or demand from you a 30-second synopsis. So basically, you've got
Yeah,
30
me doing
seconds
something fast. This is going to
to
be
give me
impressive.
a synopsis of the cage. So take a deep breath, roll your shoulders back.
Let's see if I can do it under 30 seconds.
Are you ready?
Go on then, let's go for broke.
Your time starts now.
USS Enterprise picks up a distress signal from a Earth-based ship which has been missing for 18 years. Uh, they find it in the Talos star system. They beam down, find a pile of survivors who are all very, very aged, apart from a young-looking Vina. And subsequently, when push comes to shove, the colonists disappear. Pike ends up trapped with the Talosians and Vina and put in a cage.
And
Oh,
that's
very
30
literally cage.
seconds.
Oh, bollocks. And I didn't even get halfway through.
Um, no, that was very good though. You were definitely apace with it.
Yeah.
Let's see if you can
But,
wrap it up in another 30 seconds.
yes, top and bottom. So,
So picking
Talosians
it
you
up from
find, yeah,
now.
the Talosians you find are telepaths, and they brought the Earth ship here basically to find a mate for Vina, which was going to be Pike. But as humans do not like to be trapped in a cage, he did everything he could to get himself out of it. I mean, otherwise, if I'm going to get too complicated if I keep going.
And that leaves 10 seconds left to go on the
All
clock.
right.
So yeah, that's good. That's really good. I think, to be fair, I think most people watching this will have seen the cage by now,
Yeah.
anyway, or Menagerie at very least.
Yeah, I mean, I say I'd seen the Menagerie. Obviously, it was a long time until I actually got to see the full version of the cage.
And that's it. Do you remember? So we're Trekkies from back in the olden days. Do you remember the cage coming out?
Yes, because I collected the video cassettes, and I didn't get the black and white version, but I did buy the full color version.
Mm.
So that's back in the day when we used to get the video cassettes out like on a monthly or so basis with 2 episodes on each tape for £9.99, which continued through
Yeah.
with like next generation TS9 and Voyager.
Mm.
But I remember coming out.
And the first season of Enterprise.
Oh yes. I'd packed in VHS by then.
Oh, that's because you were like always up with the Down with the kids, up with the kids.
Yeah, not anymore.
But yeah, I see. I remember seeing it, and I remember, like yourself, having it on VHS. But I don't remember a big deal being made of it at the time.
No, it just appeared. There wasn't like a special edition with a documentary or anything like that on it, I don't think.
No, there was no real fanfare to it. Hmm. There was a special version of the cage done. Oh, I say a special version, the original version of the cage, with I think different titles and a few extra deleted scenes. That is on the Blu-ray
Is
of
that the Roddenberry
season
Archive
one.
one as well? No.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Now I haven't seen that. I'll be honest.
No, I've
Have
not got
you?
that.
No,
No.
that's one we ought to look at
Have
some
to start
point.
digging out.
Yes, absolutely. But nonetheless, we've both had a good watch. I've watched it again recently. I'm
Yeah, I've,
guessing
I've
you
watched it
did
again
too.
recently, and to watch it, to think how ahead of its time it was,
Mm,
especially with the production values, the design of the Enterprise, the the casting. It was just way, way, way ahead of its time. I mean, it was certainly not lost in space. Certainly not lost in space.
absolutely, absolutely.
And the the fact that Lucille Ball, with her part of Desilu Studios, had such confidence in it and
Mm,
such support for it, because
yes.
they wanted a franchise, or they needed a franchise, and they got two, which are now
In
still Paramount's two big franchises:
Yep. What's the other one?
Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible, of course. Yes, yes. I always forget that was Destiny. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was basically what broke Desilu, because the budget on the weekly Star Trek and the budget on Mission Impossible, uh, Desilu basically had to stump up half the money for each, for half,
Mm,
paying half the episodes, because the network would only pay half the money, and that's what basically knackered Desilu in there, because she wanted to keep as much control as possible, and she fought for our programs.
what you had
We're
there.
getting ahead of ourselves.
Absolutely, we are. Now, I'll confess, I watched the remastered version
Mhm.
in preparation for this, mainly because it was obviously never designed to be watched on these great big 60-inch,
No, in
4K
4K, kind of
TVs.
update, upscaled and everything. Yeah,
It was about like it was meant to be seen on screens about that big, that in black and white and grainy as hell. Um,
but even the remasters were done on a budget, and they
mm,
look okay, on the 4K screen. But the the suffer even. I mean, if you look, the remasters now are coming up to 20 years old from
mm,
CBS Digital, so they're showing their age a little bit.
yes. But even though there's moments when the camera was perhaps not as in focus as it should have been, which back in the day wouldn't have been noticeable, but now is glaring, it did make it a lot more watchable, I found.
Yeah.
Um, so, with that in mind, shall we start with our good? What's your top good or your number one good?
I'm going to do something similar to what I said with Section 31. The good is that it exists, and it is the beginning of something that is just means so much to so many people,
Yes.
and that we actually
Yes.
have it. And it's really nicely made, and it's not embarrassing to watch either. Where you've
Mm,
got so much stuff, even from the 60s, 70s. I mean, you look at like a weekly episode of something like Buck Rogers now, and you compare it to this. Quality is
yeah.
just off the scale in comparison. It's
Yes.
adult. I know they kept saying that the pilot wasn't sold because it was too cerebral. Um, and it still holds up today. I mean, there's certain things that don't, but we'll cover that.
But
And
in
the,
of
and
its
also
time.
also the also the clips of Vina as the Orion slave girl with the other starship officer and the guy ogling over her and saying that these girls like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but it was. I mean,
Product of
it
its time.
sounds a cop out to say it's a different time, but it genuinely was a different time. It was still progressive for its time. No, I think that's absolutely fair. And do you know what I was sort of expecting a similar sort of good point from yourself. That from that all this has sprung up.
Exactly.
Um, so I've avoided that being one of my good points.
Because
Although
you know me too well.
completely agree. um, I've actually got for my first point the use of star dates rather than the actual Gregorian calendar.
Yeah.
Because it made the actual date that it was set utterly ambiguous. We're used now to saying, "Oh yeah, well we know it was the 23rd century, and we know like we do the conversions." But back then, it was to actively avoid. It could have been 600 years into the future. It could have been 50 years into the future. Who knows?
But also to go with that is you notice they say in the cage that when they meet the colonists on the planet, saying, "Oh, it's not going to take that long to get home because we've broken the time barrier." And when they talk
Mm,
about warp speed, they call it a time warp.
yes,
And that's the only time to do it in the cage. Because obviously they
yes.
haven't developed everything, we've got 60 years of continuity and different writers and everything since to do that, and there's no mention of the Federation in this.
No, that's very true. I mean, there's a couple of things in terms of dating it that I think Gary Marshall mentions a poem, or he starts quoting a poem that was actually written by Roddenberry about his airplane. But yeah, he starts quoting a poem, and he says that it's like the best poetry to come out over the last couple of centuries, and it was written in 1996. So you can sort of say, oh, well, it was probably, you know, 21, 2200, around the 2200 mark ish. But
But
it's
written
keeping it
in
ambiguous, and
1996, though, 1996, pivotal year.
it really was that the Bell Rights?
Eugenics
No, no,
wars.
we've just had that.
Yeah,
Eugenics wars, of course. Of
yeah.
course, of course, of course. Well, it was the
Well,
eugenics wars. Now it has changed.
now it's changed. Strange new worlds. We just move along the bus.
I can hear David Tennant saying
Wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
in my
I
head.
use that all the
Um,
time.
but yeah, I just think it was a really clever device to keep it ambiguous. And if you want to see it as 1,000 years into the future because that's how it fits in your head, it enabled that. You look at like Back to the Future and how futuristic 2015 looked. That's not aged that well in that respect. Still a great movie. I'm not knocking it. Um, but yeah, that's my first pick is the use of star dates.
My second pick is number one. The talking about the yes, there's the whole I'm not used to having a woman on the bridge bullshit. But the
Hmm.
fact that you have a female officer who was second in charge of a starship in the 60s, she's not in the typing pool.
Yeah, you're the literal poster girl slash woman for Starfleet.
Mm,
So
yes.
that is a big thing. And it shouldn't even be thought about twice in this day and age.
No. No. But like you say, of its time, 60 years ago, that was that was a big thing. And to have a woman with so much authority, I mean, we talk about the original Susan Nichelle Nichols as a Uhura, and a black woman having all that authority on a bridge. But she was the first officer
Yeah,
as number one.
yeah.
That's a lot of authority. So yeah, I think that's a great call, and really good and incredibly progressive in its day.
So what's your
Good
next
call.
one?
My next one is also a lady, but a lady of a different kind. The design of the Enterprise herself
Oh,
by
yes.
Matt Jeffries. utterly unconventional. And, at the time, you mentioned Buck Rogers earlier, Flash Gordon, things like that. The spaceships were either rockets or they were flying saucers.
Yeah, there was nothing in between.
And the design of the Enterprise sort of brought both together, which is quite clever.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought it was, yeah, I mean, she's beautiful and incredibly innovative. And
And I think
one,
as well, agreeing with you on that point, I think the fact that the warp nacelles aren't rockets is just, for the time,
yes.
amazing.
I mean, there is a line in the cage where
Yes.
Spock says about firing the rockets. So
Because all the engines aren't working, so it's an emergency procedure,
yeah, so we don't get to see that, but it's
which is a good thing.
possible they might have been rockets at the time. But yes, the fact that
We
they're
know they're
not,
not, so we're fine.
we know they're not. They're nacelles. Um, yeah, so that's my go Matt Jeffries. I think she was
Uh,
originally designed to be the other way up, wasn't she?
yeah, yeah.
With the tour section and the nacelles on the bottom.
Which is
But
that happens a second time with the Reliant, doesn't
it does. It does. I'm
it?
sure we'll come on to that at some point in this series.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. It's the ship design is my second.
my third one, I'm going to go left field,
Oh,
and it is the sound effect on Talos 4 of the plants, because that
oh,
turns up numerous times on different planets. And when you've got that sound in your head, when you hear that sound effect, it is Star Trek, the original series. You
it really
cannot get, yeah,
is.
when you hear that noise of those plants vibrating, you know where they are. And when they did it in Discovery, when they went back to Talos in season 2 of Discovery, straight away the sound of the plants was great. You can't
That's
help
a
but smile because you just know you know you're
Yeah,
there.
that's a brilliant call. I'd never really thought about it like that, but it's so iconic
Yeah.
to Star Trek. Um, that's a really, really good call. I like that one. Um, Mine is also a little bit left field, and it's kind of on the progressive side, but in a perhaps an unexpected way at the time, was the Talosians being agendered.
Yes. Yeah.
Now we have obviously a lot of modern things, and as a progressive, like I describe myself as the wokiest woke ever to woke,
King of
and
all wokedom.
absolutely,
Actually, you can't have a king if you're woke enough. It's going to get complicated.
but yeah, I think I look at the Talosian, and it's really struck me when I did the rewatch for this is they did a better job of making an agendered species with the Talosians than they did when they made the Janai in Next Generation in The Outcast,
Mm. Mm.
season 5. I think, the Talosians were a better effort than that. So yeah, that's my good number 3 is it was ahead of
We,
its time in ways it didn't even know.
oh yeah. I mean, we could go on forever with the likes. It really is of
Oh,
this. It's funny how, looking back on it. I mean, I know we're going to be looking through rose-tinted glasses,
oh,
but trying to look at it with a modern sensibility and trying to look at it constructively, I really like it, and I can understand why at the time it wasn't action packed enough for people. The plot was you had to think about it a bit. It was all mental. It was yes, there was knockdown. Yes, there was gunfight a bit in it. There was action in it. They did put
mm.
all that in, but I can understand why they sent them back to tweak a few things.
Yes, but at the same time, this was the time of the original Twilight Zone, which is about as
Yeah,
cerebral as it gets, especially
yeah,
for sci-fi. So yeah,
I mean,
I absolutely, you'll get no argument from me there.
I do love
Still.
the color scheme and the color palette of the bridge and the Enterprise. I know that they went brighter because they wanted to emphasize the color TV stuff, and I completely get why that's there. And I do miss the red engineering uniforms.
And the TVs at the time were completely desaturated as well,
Yeah,
so you
yeah,
had to have really vibrant colors in order for them to show. It's like the acting, we can look at the performances, and we certainly see it with Gary Mitchell in this, an over the top, overly dramatic, almost stage acting style. But it had to be because, like I said, the TVs were about this big.
yeah.
You couldn't have a subtle expression or anything like that.
But the
It
thing is,
just wouldn't show.
with Pike though, I mean Jeffrey Hunter, he was a matinee idol at the time,
Mm,
and they picked him for that, and his captain is quite unlike Kirk, and Anson Mount plays him completely differently um, on Strange New Worlds, and but you know, as a captain who's going through issues, post-traumatic stress from the mission that they'd just been on, where they lost crewmen and they'd lost his yeoman, things like that, and he was dealing with just world weariness.
mm.
And again, that was ahead of its time for TV. A hero had to be, he had to have the white hat on, and he had to be indestructible, and he just had to be show strength. And this showed a vulnerability in somebody who was in a command position.
Yeah, yeah,
Again, very ahead of its time.
very much so. I think it's fair to say we absolutely love it, and like you say,
Yeah,
we can wax lyrical till the cows come home about what's great about it, but it's
we
not
got to
just
do
what's
some
good;
bads.
it's what was bad. And so to caveat this a little bit, so from my point of view, I I did try and like we said, of its time, I've tried to look at it through a contextual lens. Like,
Yeah,
it's not being made today.
yeah.
A lot of things wouldn't hold up to the same
But
standard.
still,
But
I would have to say that one of the bads for me is the rampant sexism, even though it's progressive.
mm, yeah,
It's the casual sexism that if there's just you know kind of make sure the belts and braces match.
yes. Do you think it would have?
It
Do you
wouldn't
think
have
it
made
would have
much
got made
difference.
though?
Well, to be fair, there's only a few instances in it. I mean,
Mm,
yes, the whole thing that picking women to be his Eve for the Garden of Eden, if just to
mm.
repopulate a species so the Talosians can, get out on the surface and have a new population and that. But I'll just leave it at some casual sexism that they should have known better. But again, product of the
I
time.
I agree. My first bad one is something that's actually already been mentioned, is the use of time warp
It's just a jump to the left.
Yeah,
rather than like the idea of warping space. I think that's a brilliant concept and idea, but using it as a time warp thing, it sort of opened a door that made it a bit. I don't know. It halted that suspension of disbelief a little bit.
yeah,
For me, it raised more questions
yeah,
than it
yeah.
answered. So that was my
My second one is actually linked to your time warp thing there,
okay.
and it's the bit where they actually go into warp and all the characters kind of freeze in position. They play the Star Trek music over it, and then they've got like a star field going behind. That is cheesy AF. It really is. It's just like, oh, for God's sake. I mean, I know they only had basic special visual effects and stuff like that, but that bit just looked just ridiculous.
It absolutely does. That does not stand up.
It's like everybody stand still. Do, 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 do.
Look
Clap, clap,
dramatic
clap.
as you hit that button.
Exactly,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Yeah. So my second one here is a bit of a weird one, and I sort of get it in the sense of, as we've already said, it wouldn't have been noticed on the TVs at the time, but the guy operating the transporter, I don't know if he's a transporter chief or just random crewman operating the transporter. He's clearly he's been in the wars because he's got a wrist brace on, he's got plasters on his neck.
Yeah, but remember they've just had that fight on Rigel, so he could be one of the members of the crew who was injured in the fighting on Rigel.
Oh, could be. Or of course, he might have been injured when they went through the barrier. Because
Wrong episode.
this episode, as a slight side,
Yeah,
is
yeah.
the
You're yeah,
most
you're
casual.
come back a bit. Come back a bit.
Oh no, of course I am. Yeah, yeah. Oh God, yes. No, right, okay.
Having a
Scratch that.
senior moment.
It's easily done. It's easily done.
Easily
Yeah,
done.
yes. So they've had the Rigel 7 incident. It could have been from that, but the thing is, we get no explanation for it.
No, no.
I mean, I personally suspect that the actor had an injury, and they just didn't think it had ever been noticed.
He's one of the stuntmen. He's a bit bashed up. Yeah, just chuck a couple of plasters on, stand in front of the transport. I look busy.
If he's a stuntman and he's injured himself, he's not a very good stuntman. It's got to be said. Anyway, that's
Can I add in Craig's usual fashion? Can I add a little caveat to your transporter chief there?
Go for it.
Now, on that scene in the transporter room on the Enterprise, there's two people operating the transporter. There's the guy that you mentioned, and next to him is a guy of Asian descent.
Mhm.
Now, when they have come to do Strange New Worlds, they have an Asian transporter chief. Now, for some idiotic reason, but you can do this, they have changed Commander Kyle from being a blonde British person to an actor of Asian descent. So why did they not just use, we've got this Asian character from The Cage who has not got a name. This person is a transporter chief. He is Asian. This is the character in Strange New Worlds. Would it not have just made sense?
It does, and I'll go down this rabbit hole a little bit with you. So in my head, it's not the same Officer Kyle.
Yes.
And so it could be that same Asian who just also happens to be called Kyle because we don't hear his name in the cage, do we?
But do you think these people are actually paying that much notice?
I don't think they're as geeky as we are.
Which is probably a good
Some
thing.
of them are. I mean, this is why I love Lower Deck so much, is because anyway,
They get it.
Yeah,
they get it.
Absolutely. So that's my second. What's your third bad?
Oh, I've lost my train of thought now. It was just
I'm assuming you have one.
I have got one. Yes, I remembered it. I remembered it now. The fight scene on Rigel.
Hmm.
The guy who plays the giant, great action officer. The false teeth that they have on that guy. The proper stick out comedy false teeth. And you look at it and it's like, it's not scary. It just looks hilarious. It's like absolutely hilarious. As a kid, when you saw Jaws and James Bond, you went, "Ooh, I'm scared of this." But I know this is like, 12 years earlier, but still, they just didn't have to make him look goofy when he's supposed to look menacing and evil and horrible and stuff like that. I mean, the fight scene is much better than the Gorn fight scene with Kirk and Arena, which is iconic. But it's just like the guy looks like Janet Street Porter. Like, come on.
I'll put up a picture of Janet Street Porter on the screen for any American viewers who might not know.
Well, actually, what you need to do is you need to probably do like a Kenny Everett version of Janet Street Porter with the exaggerated teeth. That'd be the best one.
I hear you on that, and I mean, for me, you're saying about the fight scene. So one bit that always stands out to me in that fight scene is when Pike's holding the spear and
Yeah.
that creature walks into it, and the end of it just bends because it's clearly made of rubber.
Health and safety.
Health and safety indeed. No, that's a good. Yeah, I think the makeup could have done perhaps a little bit more effort in there would have made all the difference. My my third bat is from that same scene, but it's just before then, as they run towards the castle, or they're about to run towards the castle, Susan Oliver making that weird face.
Oh, yeah, we knew what it was.
I mean, what? As I said earlier, I know that actors have to make their performances bigger than like normal a show like that, but what? I don't. I'd love to know what the director said to her to give that reaction because it makes me laugh every time I think about it, and not in a good way. Oh, she's great. Susan Oliver's great. I don't want to knock her, but
I mean,
that was
iconic.
a weird choice.
I mean, her Vina in the Orion slave girl thing is going to be forever something that she's remembered for down the ages.
Well, having her in the title sequence, the end
At
credit
the end on the
sequence, I
Desilu thing,
think,
and that,
yeah, that's definitely had a big part of that. Right, shall we talk about what we thought was? I mean, the whole thing was batshit crazy.
Yes.
Let's be honest, because it was out the box. It was
Yeah.
unusual. But what stood out for you?
Uh, I'm with you with the whole thing being batshit crazy. I mean, I just love the idea of the Talosians and the makeup of the Talosians and the pulsing veins in their heads and stuff like
Yeah,
that is. And to be
that
fair,
was
it's
good.
really well done for the time.
Mm.
At the time, it's really well done, but it's proper batshit.
It really is, really is. So the Talosians themselves, that's a good one. My first one is the transporters. And of course, I know the background that they came up with the idea of the transporters because it was cheaper than having a shuttlecraft,
Oh yeah,
as
because they
part of
can't land it, they
the
can't land the ship
budget.
every episode.
Exactly. Can't land the ship, can't do a shuttlecraft. So but the idea of the transport is something we take so much for granted. And all right, it wasn't a new idea then,
No.
because it had been sort of talked about in science fiction for a while. But as a creative solution, and it is now so iconic to Star Trek, and just yeah, I think that was a bit of a crazy idea.
Yeah,
They could have gone with stock footage of a shuttle landing and just reused that over and over again. A lot of shows did that sort of thing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, transporters.
And
That's
again,
my first one.
adding a little caveat, if you notice in when near the end of the episode, when the yeoman's being beamed up and then number one's being beamed up, that was a very clever visual effect at the time because you had one character get beamed up, moved off the transporter, still in shot, and then number one getting beamed up as well. So it was a split screen effect with visuals with the transport, and even back before the remaster episode, that was really quite ahead of its time with split screen and visual effects going on as well.
Very much so. Very much so. That's a really good
Anorak
call.
mode on.
Anorak mode. I mean, we're just constantly in Anorak mode on this
Oh, yeah.
channel. Which is why I love things like the top of the transporter in the next generation, the circles at the top, are the
Is
actual props
Yeah,
from the bottom that
the
they
bottom
stood
from the
on.
original series.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so what's your second batshit one then?
My second batshit is it was one of the visual effects at the start of the episode where you've got the Enterprise panning and then on a slight angle, then it zooms into the bridge.
Yes.
That that is a crazy effect. That is just where did I mean? It's very clever. I mean, it's not. It's far from perfect. But the idea of actually, the ship panning and zooming in, and you see, and the fade into the bridge there. How did they think of that at the time? Because motion control and things and stuff like that didn't really exist properly
Mm.
until like much later. And
It
so
had to be
who
done
actually thought
manually.
of it and who thought of the concept to kind of get that in there? That was really again ahead of its time. And just where did they come with the idea? You know,
Yeah, and even after
these
the
crazy
idea,
people.
a lot of people would have said, "Look, yeah, it's a great idea, but too expensive because it would have had to have been done by hand, frame by frame."
Yeah,
Yeah, ridiculous amount of work. So yeah, no, I
just
think
ridiculous.
that's a cracking one. Um, my second one is something that you mentioned earlier. It's the Orion slave girls thing. Um, Now, I've put this in the batshit because I think at a time when obviously, slavery is bad and it's a time of civil rights upheaval and things like that. I think having it in there and trying to put a different, more, I think they were attempting to put a more progressive slant on the idea. I think it failed, but I think the attempt was there. I just think, yeah, that was a kind of a crazy idea.
Yeah, because I mean, didn't they even say that when he was, thinking about leaving the service, and the doctor gave a sarcastic comment about what you're going to go and going to go and sell the riot slave
Hmm.
girls kind of thing. It's like
Y-
in the 23rd century. And obviously we didn't know it was the 23rd century, but it's like, oh no,
Yeah,
we trading people in this day and
in
age
the
and
future,
thing.
but when you have that, and like you say, it's a now we look at it as like pretty grossly
Yes.
sexist, but the
Yeah.
idea that actually they like it.
Yeah.
I think the concept was there, like, this is a truly alien species, and what
Yeah.
we hold as values might be completely and utterly different for them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Because we're
I think as an
imposing. Yeah.
attempt, I sort of, I suppose I'm saluting the attempt, even though it didn't necessarily land. We
But
we
I do
we
think with
applaud
Yeah, but I
a
think
lot
with
where it did land.
Enterprise, jumping to Enterprise and the Orions, where they spin it round where, you don't actually
Yes,
understand that it's the women who control everything and it's the
that was a
perception and
good
everything.
retcon.
Yeah, but it works. And,
Yes. Yes. Nice little retcon. That obviously wasn't the case at the time, though.
yeah, it
But
obviously
yeah.
it obviously wasn't the case at the time. But I'm struggling
No.
for a third, to be fair.
Okay. I have a third, which again was mentioned earlier, which is the fact that NBC rejected it for being too cerebral. That is a batshit reason for rejecting it.
They, I know they were concerned for lots of other reasons as well, because they wanted to know they wanted action and adventure. They wanted the white hatted guy. They
Hmm.
wanted something that they could play in the South quite easily. I mean, all these well, like you say, these batshit decisions now
Hmm.
shouldn't make the difference.
Yeah. I still think even for its, like I say, you had things like the Twilight Zone out there. Um, you look at movies which I know Gene Roddenberry drew a lot of inspiration from Forbidden Planet
Oh, a lot,
for this. In
a
fact,
lot.
in fact, Talos was almost called the Forbidden Planet.
Yeah, yeah,
Which, yeah, I know there was a lot of it, but that is a very cerebral movie, and look at the popularity of that. So I don't
yeah,
know why they didn't, let's say, this is really cerebral. It's going to appeal to a lot of people.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. But I mean, one of the not say that's something that's not batshit crazy, but something that was probably ahead of its time as well, but a product of its time is keeping all the nautical references and the structure like in a naval structure and things like that. Yes, he said it was like the Coast Guard rather than the Navy, which,
Yeah.
but that is something that held it in place, that held the reality of it. It's not like you're space captain this, you're that. It was grounded in a
Yeah.
reality that people, that people can like relate to.
Yes. Yes. It helps to contextualize it in your own experience. Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Absolutely. That's a good call. Uh,
But
so there we go. That's our good, bad, and batshit thoughts. Uh, any surprises for you there?
no, no, I've it's a episode that I go back to a lot. Um, and I do think early season one of original series is fantastic, and some of the episodes, some season two and stuff like that. But I think they did come out of the gate after the pilot, and after this, and getting repurposed, but in getting the chance to do a second pilot and go from there was just. It's possibly one of the best business decisions that anybody's made, just purely for the numbers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there we go. So viewers, what do you think? Do you agree with our choices? Is there anything that we've missed that we should have talked about? Do leave a comment below. Let us know what you think, and make sure you like and subscribe as well, because the YouTube algorithm loves that and helps us reach more people and will help the channel grow into bigger and better things. And we'll appreciate you for it as well, won't we? So join us next time when we'll be looking at another first. It's another episode and it's another pilot, but we won't say what until it drops. Make sure you're here for it. In the meantime, I'm going to say peace and long life.
Live long and prosper.